Hey, very good weekend to everyone. For this weekend's video, I'm going to answer a very important question that's been going on in many people's minds, especially if you are maybe an A-level student or you're a parent, right? And I'm going to answer the question, are local degree holders screwed? Okay? And where does this idea comes from? It comes from the latest article from the Economist, where they talk about the employment rate of degree holders versus non-degree holders. That employment rate difference is narrowing very rapidly in developed economies. So in places like Europe and the US, having a degree no longer confirms a guarantee that would actually increase your odds of employment. All right. And obviously, on top of that, we're seeing a wage premium. In other words, the starting salary of a degree holder versus a non-degree holder. That wage premium has been very high, but it has been narrowing for the past decade. Okay, and this is something that is pre-artificial intelligence, and it is a trend that has started in the 2010s. Okay, now for some people, they would argue that this is good because society is becoming more equal and there is a larger premium for skills instead of educational qualifications. Uh, but this is going to be a problem in many of these Western societies because there is a concern that, if you're an intellectual and you cannot make a decent living, you will join the ranks of a counter elite and you will attempt to destabilize society postulated by author Peter Turchin. And he has evidence in the past that entire societies civilizations have fallen because these societies are able to create a very dissatisfied group of intellectuals who will then go on to come up with ideas to generate a revolution, for example. All right, so this is my starting point. Okay, for those who want to read further, you can buy the copy of The Economist, probably one of the best articles ever written in recent times, and some syndicated abridged versions have started appearing in our local press. So I'm trying to front run by creating a video based on my own personal analysis. Okay, and so what I want to do is to take this issue and apply it to the Singaporean context. And I think that Singaporeans do have a right to be worried because we've experienced years of tech overemployment during the pandemic, and now we're suffering from indigestion, right? You're seeing a lot of retrenchments happening in tech firms, okay? And part of it's being blamed on artificial intelligence, in that artificial intelligence is making people more productive, so there is no need to generate more headcount, and they can release some of their older workers that may or may not want to pick up AI. All right, so that's a valid worry. And on top of it, uh, Singaporeans of different generations actually have a different university participation rate. So for folks who are Generation X, only about 25% of my cohort have degrees. And so if we have a degree, life is actually very good relative to our peers. But if you don't have a degree, life's not so bad because you can be above average and you will still do well in Singapore. You see a lot of people who have diplomas about my age in their 50s, maybe driving expensive European cars and doing very well in life, okay? But the same might not be said about younger generations, especially Gen Z, where 58% to 60% of the population have at least a degree. And that means that when you have a degree, life might not be that good. It might just make you average. Your outcome is not going to be that great. But if you belong to the 40% that do not have degrees, life might suck, right? It might really, really suck. Okay, so are we overproducing on degree holders for the younger generation, given that there are 6 autonomous universities in Singapore, right? So now the fear is that you have a degree, it no longer confers advantages. Instead, if you do not have a degree, it leads to very drastic life outcomes. All right, and of course, that big fear that parents have is that I spent so much of my income paying so much money to tutors, paying for enrichment courses, only to find in the future that white collar jobs no longer pay as well. Okay, that's something that I think a lot of parents are very concerned about. I'm going to do my best to deal with this issue as well in this video. Okay, all right, so let's just jump into the actual numbers. Right, I was able to pick up some numbers the web and obviously using a little bit of Google search, now AI enhanced. Okay. And I have a history of graduate salaries from 2021 to 2024. And I also have the graduate employment rates. Okay. I have also produced the same numbers for diploma holders so that we can have a proper basis for comparison. And if you look at the degree premiums that I have investigated, okay, the degree premium is calculated by getting the graduate employment salary minus the salary for diploma holder divided by the salary of a diploma holder, all right? So that's like a premium of a degree versus a diploma, all right? But these are autonomous degrees, right? You can expect the degree premium for private universities. I'm just estimating that it will be half of that of the local autonomous degree, all right? I'm not judging. I'm just thinking that is the, I think, the current numbers that we're seeing in Singapore, right? And this is what I've observed, right? Over the past 4 years, the degree premium has more or less, all right, has more or less remained between 50 to 55%. At least I'm not seeing the reduction of the degree premium versus a diploma in recent years, okay? But I am cautiously optimistic, okay, but we really need to look at 2025 figures, because in 2025 we'll be seeing the combined effects of artificial intelligence and the Trump tariffs on the degree premium, and who knows, right? Uh, I would be concerned if it drops below 48%, right? If it drops below 48%, okay, that might indicate the kind of sea change that we are seeing in Singapore society. But right now, as of now, we cannot conclude that yet. Okay, so there you go, right? Degree holders in Singapore are not screwed, okay, but let us withhold judgment until the 2025 numbers are released. Okay, we have bucked the global trend in the West since 2010s, okay, and this is likely because as a society we are not driven by ideals, okay, we are pragmatic society. So and in fact, when I'm growing up, we don't push too hard to get our students into arts and humanities courses. In fact, the only attractive course for an art student is the study of law. But if you actually look at law students, many of them come from science courses, right? Okay, so that's not necessarily sort of an arts humanities kind of program. Okay, so the good news is that for those who do get into arts and humanities programs in Singapore, they have relatively steady employment. They don't go through that problem in the West, right, where it's, you know, you, what can your degree in gender studies give you when you go out to work, right? You know, is Microsoft looking for a philosopher lately? You know, there are jokes like this, okay, but I don't think these jokes apply to the folks in Singapore, and they're okay because the government needs people with a humanities major to do policy making and at least to teach, right? So it's not so bad, okay. And of course, we've been making the right moves, and this is going to offend a lot of people, but I was a big fan of a liberal arts university, Yale and US, but over the years, I've noticed that it seems to be the kind of breeding ground for a lot of woke ideology. And so I think it's the right thing to do to close Yale and US and give the books away to everybody. So I'm in support of that policy. Okay, and the other thing I like is the merger of the arts and science faculties in NUS, because if you can merge, and then you could quietly have a majority of the students study STEM subjects instead of the art subject. But that's actually to protect our humanities students, because if you have a lower number, the demand is going to be higher. They get good salaries and they can go on to have a good life. All right. So okay, this is my opinion. It's a little bit controversial, but feel free to disagree in the comments if you think that I'm wrong. Okay. All right. So how should we think about university education right now? Okay. I believe that only a staunch idealist will see the university as a place of learning. All right. We're Singaporeans. I think we should pick something that we do enjoy, okay, but also something that the world wants and is willing to pay for. All right, you study something you're passionate about, but what if something pays better? You're less passionate about it, I think you should still go for something that would give you a higher rate of employment, right? Okay, and the third harsh truth is that I still don't believe that a skills-based education will give you the best life outcome. Right? Fundamentally, the whole point of having a university education is for its signaling effects. In other words, if you go for the big three, NUS, NTU, and SMU, you're just demonstrating to the employer in the future that you're a person of high quality. That's it. You're not really telling the employer that um, I can build a business from ground up. I can do a lot of these things, right? But that's not the aim, right? The aim is that a university uh, filters for high conscientiousness, high openness to new experiences. So we have a group of people that are hardworking, that are open-minded, and can actually take our multinationals to a greater height, right? And if you lack skills, think about it, the top university students go to a management associate program, often in a bank, right? And this is where they pick up actual skills of work, right? How to answer an email, how to use a spreadsheet. And multinationals, like Procter and Gamble, which is my first job, there is a very strong emphasis on skills development. And so actually for even for my generation, a lot of skills are picked up in your first job. All right. So I think we should really get real about this. And I know the government is driving for skills future and skills based education. I'm not buying it based on the numbers I'm seeing. Okay, prove me wrong. Comment if you think that I'm wrong or I'm right. Okay, I don't think skills matter as much as the signaling effect right now. In other words, you need your top A-level grade. You need a first class honors. It's no longer polite to get a third class honors. You look like an idiot in the workplace. All right, so you might get a good GPA. And I'm sorry if it hurts Gen Z, but this is the reality that we are going to go through, right? If there's going to be a jobs crunch, right, the people who will get it first are those people with poor GPAs, okay? And then after that, if you're a first class honors, it might be easier to get a job, all right? Okay, what do you do at a personal level, okay? Get the highest level of education in a specialist subject to get yourself employed, all right? Yeah, you might not be so passionate, and there's this bunch of really crazy people to talk about developing your passion, right? But I think passion should be built as you gradually master a subject, right? I did electrical engineering. I love physics and maths. But even as an engineer, I have to develop that passion for things like transmission lines, very dry topic, power systems, where you deal with like mega voltages, right? And that's not something that comes naturally to a maths, physics, and computer science major, right? So you have to take your time to gradually master a subject. Okay. So how do we develop the generalist skills that really make a difference in the workplace? Okay. Do it through your CCAs. The whole point about generalist skills is that you shouldn't get yourself to a position where you're examined based on it, right? I have a video channel today and we've attracted more than 1,000 viewers after 6 years of conducting investment training. And that's part of the decade that I've spent in the Toastmasters movement learning public speaking, right? And I would say that the time I spent with the Toastmasters movement probably helped me more than my engineering education today, right? Given on hindsight that I'm a lawyer, I'm an engineer, I'm a financial analyst at the same time, right? So public speaking is really the skill that unifies all these skills together. But if you examine me on public speaking, I might lose interest on it, right? So I think it's a lot better to do it in front of my friends, and sometimes give a speech for shits and giggles, right? So you want to develop these generally skills as part of a CCA, okay? Now, once you land a job in a specialist field, right? Artificial engineer, data engineer, data science specialist, a litigator, then you have to start rushing to develop generalist skills, right? If you're a litigator, right, you know that the people who get employed, these are the people who find files for your law firm, right? So you need to develop networking skills, you need to develop salesmanship skills, right? If you are a computer guy and you do a lot of coding, right? And you know that, if you want to get ahead, you might have to develop some agile management skills. You might want to learn how product management works so that you can communicate with a product manager better, right? Or if you are in HR, you want to pick up some finance so that you can expand your domain, right? So there are two ways of expansion, right? One is through domain, which is like for HR to finance, and one is skills where you develop coding and then public speaking at the same time. Okay, so there are two ways to become a generalist while you're a specialist at work. All right. And just a matter of prediction, I think in the future, engineering degrees may be safer than computer science, because the fact is that computer science, where's your competitive advantage? Everybody has a computer at home. I could go to Coursera and pick up some Python programming skills. Today I can code in Django. I can do Python. I can even sign up for an AI apprenticeship program, right? But that's because I have a PC and I got a mobile phone, right? But the fact of the matter is that we don't grow up with oscilloscopes at home, right? We don't grow up with transistors that we could solder and build a power amplifier at home, right? So this is just my prediction. I think that engineering might be safer simply because the stuff you do in the lab would make you sort of unique among that pool of candidates that companies are looking for. And I think right, the top engineering students end up management associates for many banks anyway, all right, because they're very, very numerical, very mathematical. Okay, and finally, okay, and this sounds a little bit selfish because I'm an investment trainer, right? Build multiple sources of income as a hedge, including investing. Okay, so that's all I have for you. If you like my content, subscribe to my channel. If you want to buy me a coffee, you can use this link. If you want to listen to my life story, I have a link here that gives you access to Dr. Wells' early retirement masterclass, and Google ERM intro and take the first link. And I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.